On Larry King Now, Elizabeth Gini in her first sit-down interview since her son Sawyer Sweeten's death.
We had questioned him, if he felt, suicidal, and both times he said no. So, although we were concerned about him, there was relief because we thought, okay, well, that we're not there.
What the Everybody Loves Raymond star was going through before he died.
They went to Texas, and, at that time, that's when he had a conversation with his dad and told his dad, he felt like he was evil and didn't deserve to live.
Evil.
Mm-hmm. That's the words he used.
What life is like without Sawyer.
More for me, the pain of the past is not pain. It brings me happiness and joy. It's the future and trying to envision my future without him. That's the part that gets to me.
Why are you speaking out now?
I want to help other parents. I don't want any other mother or father to feel what we're feeling, ever.
Plus, suicide prevention expert Dan Reidenberg on what parents should look out for in their kids.
Suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people in our country, aged 10 to 24 years of age.
So, take it seriously.
We need to take all the things seriously, and oftentimes parents feel like it's just normal teenage angst, and the reality is that's a very high-risk period for people. Often what I tell people is, trust your gut. If your gut is telling you something is wrong, you need to ask about it, and not be afraid to ask the suicide question.
My new motto is overreact and then apologize later, because your kids are going to forgive you.
It's all next on Larry King Now. On April 23rd, Sawyer Sweeten, who was best known as Jeffrey on Everybody Loves Raymond, killed himself. He was only 19. Here today to share her story is Sawyer's mother, Elizabeth Gini. This is her first time speaking publicly about her son's death, and later we'll be joined by mental health and suicide prevention expert Dr. Dan Reidenberg. He is executive director of the Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, or SAVE, and he's managing director of the National Council for Suicide Prevention. He's been with us before. Probably the worst thing any parent can face is the loss of a child. Is it doubly worse when it's by their own hand? Do you think?
Well, I have lost another child, so I can tell you that this is much more difficult than the first one. So yes, I think because there's a lot of, there's so many what ifs and unanswered questions.
Now, the country got to know Sawyer from the television show.
Yes.
Tell us about him.
Sawyer, I just genuinely one of the best hearts of any person I've ever met, really. Not just because he was my child, just because he was just a kind-hearted, benevolent person. Unlike most in his generation, he didn't care about money, whether he had it or didn't have it, or whether you had it, or what you could do for him. He was just such a giving person, and so he was very affected by other people's pain, pain in the world, anything.
And he was tender.
Oh, very.
He was a twin?
Yes, identical twin, yes.
And what is his brother? How is his brother doing?
He's actually doing quite well. I mean, I'm obviously afraid simply because I've already lost one, so I'm terrified. But he seems to be doing rather well. I've, taken him to counseling. The counselor says he's doing well. He's sad and was angry for a good bit. So
when did you think or know that Sawyer was having some sort of problem?
About 8 days before he died.
Just 8 days?
Yes. 8 days.
No signs before that?
No. Now, I think there were about 2 weeks prior, based on just information from his roommates. But on the 8 days before his death is when I noticed.
What?
I went to visit them at their home. They bought a house, and
they are who?
The twins bought a house
together.
Together. My husband and I walked in, and I noticed he looked a little, for lack of a better word, I can't really describe it in words, but he looked disheveled, kind of unplugged, and he was just kind of wandering aimlessly from room to room in his own home, almost like he didn't know where he belonged in his house. It was kind of an odd thing to watch.
What did his brother say?
He wouldn't give me any information. He was in the kitchen. They were very protective of one another, and they, with their own identities.
So the brother knew something was wrong?
No, he didn't. He didn't. He told me later that he didn't know till later that night that something was wrong. He said, I noticed he looked different, but he said, I didn't know, and it wasn't my place to, tell you.
So this was sudden?
Yes, I call it sudden. I say 2 weeks of...
Did you talk to him?
Oh, yes.
And what did he say? What?
Well, that day I just asked him, son, what's going on with you? And he said, I'm fine. And I started noticing him wandering, and I asked him again, I said, honey, what is wrong? And he said, I'm fine. And I said, you're not fine. And I said, and so that's when I asked Sullivan, and Sullivan was like, ask him, I don't know. And I didn't see them the rest of that day. We left, and then I spoke with him the next day. We went bowling, and he still again looked kind of disheveled, and I asked him, I said, Sawyer, what's going on with you? And he just kept saying, I don't know. I'm so tired of saying I don't know. The last 2 days I've said it so many times. And he was rubbing his head, just constantly rubbing the front of his head, like almost, I don't know, like it was hurting or what was going on. And he told me, California makes you think things that isn't true. And I thought, what? I said, honey, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And he said, it just makes you think things that aren't true. I need to get out of here. And of course, my mom panic sets in, and I'm thinking, oh, my kids are gonna leave, what's going on? And we got interrupted, the conversation got interrupted, and it was time for him to go. And we took the conversation up the next day, and in the car where I was alone with him, and I said, honey, talk to me, what's going on? And he said, I feel unwelcome in my own home. And again, I didn't really know what that meant. And
you have a conflict with his brother?
Well, no, but my mom instincts kick in, and I'm thinking, oh, the roommates, somebody's making my son uncomfortable in his own house, like, I'm gonna fix this, you think I'm onto something else now. I'm not thinking it's about him. I thought, well, maybe they're doing something that and some friends that would visit, I thought maybe they're doing something to make him. Yes, that's what I thought. And I told him, I said, if there's a problem, we need to work on the problem. Leaving and running away, you're going to take the problem with you. And I asked him, are you feeling depressed? Do you feel like you need to see a doctor and maybe get some medication? And he said, no, and doctors don't prescribe real drugs. It's all placebo. And I just thought, that confused me. This is a very, very intelligent kid. And I said, no, honey, that's not true. That's not true. If you need help, they'll give you something to help. And he said, oh, okay. And then he just clammed up. That was it. He wasn't going to talk about it anymore. And, the days went on, and I kept trying to dig and see what was going on at home.
So you never went to a doctor?
Oh, no. He
never went to a doctor?
No. That was...
Wouldn't do that?
No. He would have gone. I think he would have gone, had I pressed the issue or what have you, but he was leaving for a trip in 2 days.
To where?
To Texas. That's where he was leaving with his dad to go to Texas.
Did they go to Texas?
They did. They went to Texas. We had more conversations, obviously, before going to Texas, but, they went to Texas, and, at that time, that's when he had a conversation with his dad and told his dad, he felt like he was evil and didn't deserve to live.
Evil?
Mm-hmm. That's the words he used. Evil.
Were you concerned about letting him go to Texas?
I wasn't concerned. There was concern up to the point of that conversation, but by that conversation, they were already in the middle of the desert, almost to Texas, and my husband called me and told me that, and then it was no longer concern, it was alarm at that point, and then I realized that this wasn't about the roommates, and this wasn't about, because he had said things like he felt like that they didn't like him, and that they didn't want him around, and that they were covering up their anger with him with laughter.
Did you interrupt the trip and bring him back?
No, he was already too far. They were already too far gone at that point.
We're talking with Elizabeth Gini about her son Sawyer's suicide coming up. She'll respond to the media's handling of the death. Stay with us. We're back with Elizabeth Gini. So what eventually happened?
He had, more conversations, had a conversation with his brother.
Came back from Texas?
No, this is before leaving. He did not return from Texas.
He killed himself in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Where in Texas?
Austin.
In a house, in a room?
My sister's home.
Your sister's home?
Yes.
What did he do?
He shot himself.
Who told you?
My brother.
That had to be the worst of all.
Yes.
Total shock.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we had questioned him over the course of those 8 days, if he felt, suicidal. And he, both times, I had asked him and his dad had asked him, and both times he said no. So although we were concerned about him, there was relief because we thought, okay, well, that we're not there. It's not at that place.
Who was in the house at the time?
My husband, his brother.
Oh, they were there?
Everyone.
What did he do it up in his room?
Balcony. Outside balcony.
Where was his brother?
In the shower.
Was this a media story?
Unfortunately, yes.
Who picked it up? Tabloids?
Yeah. Trash TV, trash tabloids, yeah.
How did that doubly make it worse for you?
It made it very difficult because, we got out of the Hollywood scene. We moved out of that. It wasn't a part of our life anymore, and it wasn't a part of Sawyer's life. And so, they took this. This is someone's child, and I didn't even have time to inform family or loved ones. They found out, online and in ways that family and close friends shouldn't find out.
Before those 8 days, you had no sign, didn't think
No.
anything about schizophrenia or...
No, not at all. No, during the 8, after looking back now, I look at it and think that it was first onset schizophrenia, but there was no signs of anything before.
So at 16, 17, he was normal?
Absolutely normal.
Did he date girls?
Yeah, well, they both are kind of late bloomers, but yeah, they both had interest in girls.
You did a eulogy. You said you had the feelings when Sawyer was alive that you were on borrowed time.
I always felt on borrowed time, never necessarily with Sawyer, but just with them. I always felt, I kind of felt like always in fear that I was going to lose one of them for some reason. I don't know. It nagged at me from once I found out I was carrying twins up until his death.
You had that through their childhood?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I would always just kind of push it away.
About both of them or one of them?
Just losing one, but never knew. It wasn't specific. I didn't know. It wasn't specific to how or to. It was just a nagging feeling.
Did you get any help about that feeling? Did you see a doctor and wonder why you're having this feeling?
No, I never did. It wasn't something that plagued me or kept me from being a parent. It was just something that would kind of creep in once in a while, and I would just push it away and think, you're overreacting, to.
Did Sawyer never act again?
No, neither one were interested at all.
Really?
No, not at all. They got offers.
You know why?
They just, it was just not what they wanted to do.
What did they want to do?
Sawyer kind of wanted to be a veterinarian or, for a while. And then that dream kind of gave way to teaching. And he felt like he wanted to teach and, just whatever capacity that he wanted to give. It's just what he wanted to do.
What is Sullivan doing?
Trying to hang on. He wants to be a helicopter pilot. So he likes things like that. Sawyer didn't like any adrenaline, anything.
But neither of them wanted a career in the
Absolutely not. No, not at all.
We're going to be joined by suicide prevention expert Dan Reidenberg right after the break. He'll offer his take on this story and about what parents should look out for in their kids. That's next. We're back, and we're joined by mental health expert Dr. Dan Reidenberg. He is the executive director of the Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, managing director of the National Council For suicide prevention, you were not her counselor, right?
No.
You met today.
We met today.
Okay. Before I ask questions of you, did the cast of Everybody Loves Raymond contact you?
Yes. I was trying to think if there was anyone that didn't, but yes, they all did, actually.
Were they comforting?
Yes, of course. Yeah, they're wonderful people. Yeah, they're really good people.
And he got along well with them, right?
Oh, yeah. We had, they all came to the services, and we had probably about 380 people.
Dan, is this an unusual story in the story of suicides?
Unfortunately, it's not. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people in our country, aged 10 to 24 years of age. So we do know that this happens. Young people typically don't die, and when they do die, it is by their own hand.
But no signs until 8 days before?
And that's another thing. Unfortunately, we hear that all the time.
How do you explain that?
Well, people that are struggling with their health in their head, in their brain, and it's not working, they can disguise it pretty well. They can put on a happy face. They can put on like things are going okay. Not all of the time, but what you see is little warning signs, and you see them among different people. You don't see them all in one person. So you get pieces of a puzzle, but it's very hard to put them all together.
From the story as you've heard it, and it's just obviously fragmented, what do you gather?
From what I gather, it sounds to me like he had some sort of psychotic break, which happens, and it happens in that age range. You know, the late teens, early 20s for males, we start to see these kinds of problems happening. So he was paranoid. He might have been hallucinating, don't know that, but clearly paranoid about the roommates and some other things. Clearly was feeling depersonalization. He didn't feel like he was fitting in the right place, and things were not going well for him. Didn't feel like he had that role anymore. And so there was something going on in terms of a thought disorder.
Do you feel any guilt, Elizabeth?
Well, I think as a parent, it wouldn't really matter in which manner your child dies. You're going to feel guilt.
But do you think I should have done more? Something I didn't do.
I obviously wish I could have. I wish I had been more educated about mental health issues so that I could have caught on to what was going on with him. But do I feel guilty? You know, not really, because I did speak to my child and we did have an open connection always. You know, I've had daily contact with my child for 20 years. And and I have no regrets parenting-wise. You know, we had a great relationship. So I wish I could have caught it. I really do.
Why are you speaking out now?
I want to help other parents. I don't want any other mother or father to feel what we're feeling, ever. This is terrible. And I want them to be able to catch that. I want them to see those. I want to help change the healthcare system so that there are, you know, mental health checkups.
If it comes on sudden and they're good at hiding it,
yeah,
how's the parent going to catch it?
We need to talk about it more. We need to put...
And how would I bring up to my teenage son suicide? He's given me no sign of it.
Well, the earlier we talk to people about mental health issues, the sooner we can recognize some of the symptoms. We can look for the warning signs, and we can teach people what to look for. We can also teach them to talk to us when they're struggling. That's one of the hardest things, is they tell us things, but it's often disguised. They don't come right out and say, I'm suicidal. They might say, you know, it'd be better off if I wasn't here anymore, or nobody would mind if I wasn't around anymore. Those are subtle clues that we can pick up on as gatekeepers, as people around somebody at risk, and help them with that.
So take it seriously.
We need to take all the things seriously, and oftentimes parents feel like it's just normal teenage angst. It's normal things that they're going through, especially in transition years between high school and college. And the reality is that's a very high-risk period for people. So we need to pay attention to what they're saying, pay attention to what they're doing, look for behavioral cues that will tell us that something isn't right. And often what I tell people is, trust your gut. If your gut is telling you something is wrong, you need to ask about it, and not be afraid to ask the suicide question.
Yeah.
In retrospect, did you have any gut feeling?
Not that, well, I knew, like I said, I knew absolutely unequivocally something was wrong, but I couldn't get him to communicate with me. And although I did ask him about suicide, and as did his dad, and he said no. So because Sawyer was the type of kid that he was, and he was so honest and forthcoming, I believed him. And I think in that moment he was probably being honest with me, But in later moments, he obviously had thought of it throughout that period of time.
In retrospect, what should she have done?
I think she did everything that she could do. I think she was there, she was present, she offered help, she offered resources, she looked for the things that she knew to look for, and now what she's trying to do is make sure that other parents know what they should be paying attention to and that it's okay to do something about it.
Does depression and family history have a say in this?
Absolutely. We know that there's a connection between people that are genetically related, parents and their kids, and we know that when you're struggling with depression, you're at an increased risk of suicide. We also know that when somebody dies by suicide, somebody else in the family is at increased risk of suicide. So we know that you're twice as likely to die by suicide when you've lost a family member. So there's an increased risk there.
She should worry about her.
Oh, I worry.
She needs to worry about everybody in the family, yes, particularly when you have genetic twins. Monozygotic twins have about a 4 times greater rate risk of suicide, yes. The odds ratios are much higher.
My new motto is overreact and then apologize later, because your kids are going to forgive you. I would rather have overreacted completely to Sawyer's, what was going on, and just done something rash.
Should she have taken Sawyer to a doctor right then?
Hindsight's 20/20. We would have loved to have done that, but we don't know that if he would have gone to the doctor, he would have been suicidal at that time and they would have kept him.
No, they wouldn't.
He may have been suicidal at a later time. That's the trouble with this. We don't know enough yet about it.
In our final segment coming up, we'll talk about how to move forward after this loss, and we'll take some of your questions. We're back with Elizabeth Gini, the mother of the late Sawyer Sweeten, and our doctor friend, Dr. Reidenberg. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you say to parents now? What do you say to them? How do you deal with this post-mortem?
I don't know. I just try to get up every day. Like, it's just a struggle for me to get up every day. I'm not really sure how to deal with it and how to struggle through it, but I have other children. I have to, persevere and do what's right for them.
Wouldn't this leave the parents with psychological problems?
Oh, yes, it does. There's a 10 to 15% greater risk of hospitalization following the loss of a child. There are heart problems that come out as a result of losing a child. There are all kinds of physical and psychological things that happen after you lose somebody to suicide. Yes. And it's hard. We tell parents this is an unusual type of death. There's traumatic effects for people, not just the people that were there that saw it, but everybody that's been involved, because it's physically very violent when somebody dies by suicide. It doesn't matter really the way that they do.
Sometimes after the death of a child, parents separate. Have you had?
Absolutely not.
None.
No, it's actually had the reverse effect for my husband and I. He's actually, he's struggling quite a bit more than I am.
Really?
Oh yes, he's having a very difficult time. But no, it's actually kind of drawn us closer together, and in many ways. So.
We have a couple of social media questions. Thad Bow tweets, do you think regular mental health screenings in schools would be a good thing? Help find problems before they get tragic.
Yeah, I absolutely think that we should do more in schools. We need to train the teachers on what to look for, the school counselors. We don't have a good screening tool yet. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force actually doesn't endorse suicide prevention screening simply because we don't have a reliable tool. But we need to do more education, we need to do more awareness, we need to get this out to parents as to what they should look for, and to the kids, and tell them how to talk to other kids.
What would you do if you found out your child was suicide possible?
I would ask them. I'd ask them the question, and I'd ask it really directly.
What if you determined that they were?
I'd take them to an emergency room. I'd call the National Lifeline. I would take them to a counselor. I would take them to somebody in the faith community. I would do something. And
not leave them alone.
Never should leave somebody alone, not for a minute.
Shannon Hernandez via our blog. I've read that Sawyer had a love for cats and the colors blue and green. Can you tell me about that, and where did that stem from? We would also love if you could also share your fondest memory.
Sawyer, first of all, loved all animals, but he did have a special fondness for cats. He had his own cat, which we are now taking care of, that is a pain in the rear. But he, you know, I don't know. From the time he was very young, he liked blue and black and silver and green, and those are his favorite colors. And it was just kind of his signature.
Your fondest memory? There must be thousands of them.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. You know, I think probably my fondest memory was just as they were, after my husband, their dad, biological dad, and I split, they spent a lot of time with me, and they kind of bonded with me, and were always wanting to be right there in the mix of things. And so we would often fall asleep all in my bed, just all the kids.
Mary Alice on Facebook, where can families call for support to prevent a suicide? And also in the event of a tragedy, where do loved ones call for support?
They can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 800-273-8255. And that's 24 hours a day. It's free.
They're there now.
They're there now. It's free. It's anonymous, and they will help you. After somebody's died by suicide, we have about 450 survivor support groups around the country. And people can go to those anytime for any amount of time that they want and get support from people that have experienced the same thing.
Don't you think about non-existing? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And doesn't that scare you from doing it?
No. And the reason is that suicide is about pain. It's about ending this terrible pain, this agony that just won't go away no matter what you've done.
That's why some people, they say when someone commits suicide, he was happy the last 3 days. That's because they knew they were going to kill themselves, right? So the pain was gone.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They tend to feel this sense of relief. This burden that they've been carrying is over because they know that they're going to be out of the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Do we learn anything from the method they use, whether guns, pills, hanging? Does that tell you something?
No, because suicide is about ease of access to what will end the pain at the very end.
So in other words, the gun was easiest for him at that time.
Could be that. For other people, it's going and jumping off the side of a bridge or the side of a house. Sometimes it's pills because they're easily accessible.
How do you go on? See, I can't fathom that.
I know. People tell me that all the time. And honestly, there are moments where it's so heavy that I feel, I still feel sometimes like it's not real, like this cannot be my life. And I think more for me, the pain of the past is not pain. It brings me happiness and joy. It's the future and like trying to envision my future without him. That's the part that gets to me. It's hard. I'm not going to tell anybody that it's easy, but I have other children, and I feel like I kind of have to be strong, and somebody's got to be strong. And
how are the other children doing?
Oh, they're all having their own issues. I have one that's in an insomniac with anxiety attacks now, and you know the little ones kind of all regressed and are confused. And
how many are there?
Total, 10 children, 8 living children. So
10.
Yes, 10 total.
And the 8 are with you?
There's 5 with me now. The others are grown. You know, they're all grown.
When my young son gets angry or something and he goes into the bedroom and says, I'm going to kill myself, should I be wary?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. We should take it seriously, and we should stop them right there, and we should say, you know what, are you really thinking about that? Are you serious about that? Because if you are, we're going to do something about it right now. But if you're not, don't say that. And that's an important message that Elizabeth really wants to get out is...
There's a lot of people say that.
Yeah, but if that's what's really going on, we're going to get involved.
Don't take it not seriously.
Right,
yes.
Take it all seriously.
Yeah.
I appreciate your coming. Thank you.
You.
Thanks to my guests, Elizabeth Gini and Dr. Dan Reidenberg. For more information on suicide prevention and healing after loss, visit save.org. And if you're in a crisis, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The number is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. If you're doubtful, call. There'll always be someone there to talk to you.